Nothing is quite as satisfying as something that checks all the boxes and gets everything right. Something that covers every base and in the end is an amazing, perfectly polished and finished product. The satisfaction you feel from finally being able to sit back, relax, and enjoy the masterpiece. Brink is not that masterpiece. Instead, Brink has the scaffolding of a wonderful idea executed so poorly that it was nearly unplayable at its release in 2011, and has only marginally improved since then. Brink tried to introduce some really interesting game mechanics, missions, and combat, and had the framework of a great story, but just couldn't execute any of these things properly. Still, for a game that became free to play on Steam in 2017, I'd say it's definitely worth the cost. So, what is Brink? Allow me to illuminate you with some terrible gameplay footage and a poor explanation of what can technically be called the plot. Here I'd normally say spoilers and make some joke about it being an old game, but honestly the plot is so thin that there's really not anything to spoil. Let's begin, shall we? Brink is set at some point in the 21st century on a floating man-made island city that they call the Ark. The Ark was originally built as a model city
a center for ants,
designed to be self-sustaining and independent for the few thousand residents that live there, but global warming has caused massive flooding to overtake nearly all the land masses and has driven tens of thousands of refugees to the Ark for safety, since many people believe it is the only habitable place left on Earth. Overpopulation on the Ark has led to extreme crowding, and factions have grown as a result of the wealth divide, and tensions are rising. Some say rising to the brink of breaking, especially between the Ark security and the Resistance. Ark security is led by Captain Clinton Mokoena, who wants to maintain control of the Ark and its limited resources in order to maintain the island as long as possible. Captain Mokoena is no noble hero, however, and has no problem suppressing and killing the Resistance members, labeling them as dangerous terrorists with dangerous ideas. Mokoena also reveals that years ago, Ark representatives were sent to the outside world to make contact, only to be captured and tortured to death by those people for information regarding the Ark and its whereabouts, and how to attack it. The Resistance is led by Brother Chen, who was originally a big part of the design and construction of the Ark. He became disaffected when the founders and Ark security began to ration resources like water and isolate the refugees from the rest of the island, making sure that the security and the founders were able to live wealthy lives. Chen and the Resistance seek to protect the refugees from the greedy security forces and share the resources equally. The two factions fight each other throughout the course of the game, each with their different goals here and there. None of them are really important or noteworthy or matter in the end, because at the end of the game, regardless of which faction you choose to side with, the narrator reveals uncertainty about the Ark's future, and you can see boats approaching the Ark, thanks to the smoke rising from the combat that you just did throughout the story of the game. And that's literally it. That's the entire plot and world of Brink. This game gets so close to greatness every step of the way. The basic story has the fundamentals of something great, and even the way it's presented is really interesting. You choose a side to fight for, and the goals of your missions change depending on which faction you choose. If you choose the security, you might be disarming a bomb set by the Resistance. If you choose the Resistance, you might be seeking out and trying to steal a vaccine for some disease to distribute to the refugees. However, there are no real characters to speak of, only a few actually even have names, and there's no real plot progression or character development whatsoever. Sure, both sides technically have a story, but they both end the exact same way, and there's no development of any story aspects. Brink was definitely designed to be a fun multiplayer experience, and in that it was a great idea with poor execution. No one's buying this game for the story. So, since the story's a bummer, what about the gameplay? Again, Brink tries to create something that's really incredible here, but just can't quite get there. The game is fairly standard, or even subpar when it comes to the actual combat with regard to gunfighting, with the only notable difference being the addition of parkour. You can slide under barriers, climb and leap over them, wall run, and even leap from obstacle to obstacle, pulling yourself up at the end. Unfortunately, the game is so unbelievably choppy and full of performance issues, no matter the quality of your PC or console that's running it. Actually executing any of these parkour moves is more trouble than it's worth. It feels great when you finally do get the movement to work right, and if the game functioned the way it's supposed to from the start, it would have been a smash hit without a doubt. Unfortunately, the gimmick here was packaged in an unfinished game. Parkour is something that a lot of games try to do well, like Mirror's Edge tries to do it, and it's really weird with the first person, but they do a decent job at it. Lots of games try to do it, Warframe does a great job, but Brink just couldn't quite get there. It's hard to have a reliable parkour system when the game itself is unreliable, and kind of punishes you for taking risks with regard to the running and movement. The choppy gameplay made the multiplayer prospects for this game grim to say the least, especially if you're trying to do anything but the most basic run-and-gun style gaming. And now I do have to give credit where it's due, and that's in the customization of this game. Not only do you have a ton of control over what your characters look like, you can also upgrade and customize your weapons and class abilities to a pretty significant degree as well. The amount of personalization that you can do made unlocking the different pieces of clothing, face paints, hairstyles, and all those other things, and weapon upgrades and skins was a really rewarding experience, and it was honestly really fun. I had a great time doing it. I found myself trying and failing to unlock everything, but still trying again. Most of all, however, the classes were interesting and fun to experiment with. They encouraged you to build a dynamic team and to use the different class features to complement one another during battle. Since the matches are mission-based rather than kill-based, the needs of the fight can change as you take objectives or have to fall back and defend them. The 4 different classes all depend on each other to get the job done. If you need ammo, you better hope you have a soldier handy, since they're the only ones who can resupply you. If you want some extra damage, armor, or a turret and trip mine, call an engineer. Or if you have to repair a bridge that's collapsed or build a machine gun nest, get that engineer over there and they can set it up and help you out. If you want to sneak around and hack stuff and disguise yourself as an enemy, get behind enemy lines and do some assassination style stuff, get an operative. If you need a revive or want to boost your health, medic is the way to go. All of the classes synergize extremely well, and during each game you need a good mixture of each one in order to effectively accomplish all of the objectives. As much as Brink has a ton of problems, and honestly it's got a lot of problems, it's never going to get any better either. This is a dead game. It's been dead for several years now. I'm not hurting anyone's feelings by saying it's not done, because it's never going to be done. Brink really is a good idea with poor execution. I wanted this game to be good so bad. I remember when it came out, I bought it day one when it first came out, and I played it like crazy, and it was so disappointing. Because I loaded it up and I was like, great, this cool game, I can parkour, I can climb up stuff, I can build turrets, I can do all this crazy stuff, and then the game just wasn't good. It was almost impossible to even play it, much less try to do anything with the multiplayer, which is what the whole point of the game was. It was designed to be a big multiplayer game. But since it was so choppy, it was basically impossible to actually play the game, much less play it with other people over the internet back in 2011. It was just not something you could reasonably do. That's something I noticed too when I was doing some research for this game, is a lot of reviews said the same kind of thing. They said, we're not reviewing the game that it could be or the game that we want it to be, we have to review the game that it is. And I think that that pretty well sums up Brink. It's got the potential, or it had the potential, I should say, to be something really wonderful, a really cool and innovative design for a game, but they just couldn't get enough things right to make it successful. And sure, I mean, the game did sell, I think 2.5 million copies is the number I saw, so, you know, it's not doing terrible, but it just wasn't very good. Now, to be totally fair, I have to say, I still really enjoy going back and playing this game. They have cleaned up some things, so it does run a little bit smoother. I don't think there's any multiplayer servers left running, but it's still a fun game to drop into, throw down a few matches, and, you know, shoot some guys or throw down a turret or blow somebody up. I like the combat system where you get knocked down first, or like while you're playing, if you get blown up, you will actually be knocked to the ground and you'll have to get back up from there. That's a really cool feature to add into a game that a lot of other games just don't bother to do. Most games you can shoot yourself in the feet with a rocket launcher and just be fine. And hold a grenade until it explodes, and you might take damage, but you're not going anywhere. And Brink actually did a lot of those things, and they did them fairly well. If they could have just cleaned up the gameplay and made it not quite so choppy, I think they would have been really successful. But again, this game is just fun for me to go back and play every now and then. Every time I go back to it, I forget that it kind of sucks, but I still have fun doing it. It's still a fun game. Ultimately, and for free, who cares, you know? Download it, play it for an hour, and then quit and delete it again, and come back to it in a couple of years and do it again. It's not like it's going anywhere, and, you know, for the cost of free, it's pretty good. So anyway, this has been my rambling, meandering thoughts on Brink, and, you know, it's a fun game, But as always, I've just been some guy on the internet. I'm just making this stuff up. I think it's fun, and you know, you should try it for free. If it's not free for you, then don't bother, because it's not worth it. Not that I'm spoiling anything, because this game came out in 2011. But as always, I'm just some guy on the internet, and that's where I'm gonna end this video. I'll see you all in the next one.